All right, let's see if this sounds good. All right, let's see if this sounds good. Okay, so we can start talking now. I'm going to just cut out that part later. So, on this channel, I've had some development progress showing off work on a action platformer game I was working on previously. And there were some steps that I made on it that I didn't show people publicly on it. So this is that right now. So there's the run and the walk button. With also a nice camera thing that stays still. So if you kind of do like a little footsies thing, it won't follow you, but you have to move enough in a direction before it starts doing it. Uh, you can swing your sword, your epic Minecraft sword. That's pretty cool. You can do that. You can also wall jump like that. That's pretty cool. If you want to also, do some little hanging there, you can slide down and then jump. Um, you also have a dash mechanic that if you press a button, you fling yourself forward in a direction, you go in that direction. So, and if you want to do that, you can, ooh, what's that? It's a little wave dashing. Yeah, I got hit, whatever. I got to shut up on wave dashing. It's cool, all the melee kits like that. But anyway, yeah, you can kill things by either doing the dash mechanic or you can do the sword slashes. So, um, there's definitely an idea there. However, if I want to make the game exactly the way I want it to be, it's going to require a lot of work and rework, working, and a lot of time. So I'm thinking, okay, this right here is cool, but it's kind of a little bit difficult for a baby's first game. I mean, like this right here, that's cool to do the dashes like that. It's kind of in between of the homing attack you find in 3D Sonic games and the barrels in Donkey Kong Country. I like that. But if I was to make a game that had that in it and also make the sword slashing, feel as good as that dashing does, and then have like really elaborate enemy types and obstacles and all that stuff, yeah, I would probably be spending 5 years if I was to make that my very first game. Yeah. Again, this was good because like was a pretty good coding exercise, but again, this is my second attempt at a game, much better than my first. But yeah, there's a I decided this if I want to if I wanted to do this, I need to do smaller thing first. And to do the smaller thing first, I have an idea that it basically teaches me like a lot of the and actually helps me get a lot of the tools and like learn to generate like a lot of the assets that I would need for that bigger game, but off of something that would be a lot simpler to manage and produce while also still being a worthwhile title in itself. So that right here is this game, which is I'm currently calling it Platform Killer. So um, the idea of Platform Killer is it's going to be a challenge based platformer multiplayer game where you're going to be doing objectives and you're tossed inside a room, and then after you complete the objective, whoever did well gets the point, and then you go on to the next room. The I don't want to necessarily say any more than that because some of the maybe some of the fun of watching this may be kind of the surprises and kind of the fleshing out of that game concept. But um, but point being is that the game is going to be still a platformer game, not like full blown action platformer. What I was trying to do was something kind of like Streets of Rage while also doing a Sonic at the same time. This right here is like, you know, a lot more manageable of a platformer type game for somebody to first do. I still have the wall jump in there because it's still pretty fun, and I feel like there could be some wall jump obstacles in there. The dash mechanic is on this game, and um, attacking will be in the game, but it will probably be kind of like this simple. It will be kind of more of like a simple, whack type situation when you do that. That being said, not all challenges will give you like a tool to use, and also some challenges will give you a different tool to use than just a sword. So there's that. But but right here, I want to show off though what I did today, which was that I had to figure out how to make the same player object script and basically saving myself a bunch of work, but split it between two different characters and players that can be identified and controlled independently and all of that. So before we get to the coding and showing you what exactly I did, what I did is that we have characters that can walk past one another. So they are not interacting with each other, but they are interacting with the world around them, like that. They also have the ability to, like, if I wanted to kill that enemy, I was able to do that with the sword. However, if also I want to hit the player, I can whack the player and get a response out of them. So we have collisions on for collision layers is what they're referred to. The collision layers for the player characters are non-interactive with one another, but the hitboxes, yeah, hitboxes. The hitboxes um, are interactive on the layers with the other player on it, so you still get the reaction on there. So um, now to show you like all that went into it. So let's do that. So next time if I boot up the game, you don't see all the ugly shapes. So first, here's the character, and I'm working off of the same code from the other thing that you saw, but now obviously, I mean, I'm working on the sprite. It looks the same, but it's uh, uh oh, sorry. So I'm working off of the same character, and starting off of that starting point, what I did was I went through and I did some cleanup on the code because it was a bit of there was a bit there was some messy with comments, kind of like I didn't really, I was working on the other thing and trying to make it get to feel right, that I didn't make it, readable and comprehensible for other people. So I just said, hey, clean up things, try to make things nice and orderly before moving on with all the crazy stuff. So, uh, for, first off, before I continue, I am fully aware that there is probably quite a few redundancies in my code. It's probably not well written at all. But this is baby's first game, so please cut me a little bit of slack on there. Anyway, so what we got are what I did is that first off I removed the dash mechanic entirely. The dash mechanic just won't be featured at all in this game. If I change my mind, the dash mechanic will just be introduced back in, and I can just take the code I wrote for it and kind of just toss it back in, just kind of Frankenstein my old version and this new version of the player script I've been working on. But point being is that you had the singular player character. But then for the player one and player two objects, those characters, which you can see dropped in this scene here, if you go into like underneath the tree, it takes you to this the other object, which is the player object. So these player characters are still the same object, but what I use to distinguish them, aside from tossing a color tint on them, are the following two things. Number one is that the player here has no collision shapes on him. So if I just drop this object in the world, he would just fall through everything. But um, I also do have these boxes, like the box that turns on when you swing your sword. That stuff turns on when you go into it, like that would interact with the other world stuff. So when I do the player one object, though, I turned on the first layer. Player two object, I turned on the second layer. So if this object was enabled, like let's just show you that this is like in there. If that object is enabled, then basically the characters can start touching one another, and then that's where you can get maybe like this weird wall jump off another player, and that's that could be kind of cool, but for my current vision and kind of my current skill level, to basically kind of clean up that little glitch to become a feature, not within my skill level, so we're just avoiding that altogether. But I turned off those two layers, we hit the F5 and things froze for a second, and then now beep bop boom, character walks in, they walk through them. Okay. Now, second is that what I did with these characters is that there's a variable which I exported it as an export variable, try and keep things as, in the nice, friendly inspector element because when you're messing with stuff, this stuff is more familiar to people who've worked with 3D software before, like Blender or video editing, like Adobe Premiere. This is stuff that it's like, oh yeah, this is what we use as creatives, and this is like, oh, please avoid that. So, I'm going to try to use this more and more as the project goes on. But regardless, uh, you can add things into this list outside of the default stuff on the list if you write export variable on there, which you can write the numbers, and I wrote different numbers there. So if you go to the player has their export variable, which is the player ID. That's 0. Player 1, it's 1, and player 2, it's 2. Yep, there it is. Okay. What I did there is that by default, you have control schemes that, it just binds to something, leftover buttons from the previous version of the project. As you can see here, the way that buttons work is that, so in Godot, you have this input map where you can have every single button control in the game, and then you can choose the real world button that you hit inside the keys. So if you want to have a character move right by hitting the right key, you make an input that says right, maybe like UI right or player right, something like that. Then you write that instead of writing right key, you're writing that input name in there. So then if you wanted to say have multiple keys bound to the same input, you can do that type of stuff later. So that's the reason why it's written like this. So I made that, but I made a list of all player jump, action, and for directional movements for player 1 and then for player 2. And then I had the defaults from the previous project I was working on. By default, if player 1 was dropped into a scene by themselves, let's see if I can kind of show you this a little bit. As you saw, I moved them right a little bit. So by default, the character moves according to these inputs. But over here, when the character spawns, it reads if the character's input ID is either 1 or 2. If the input ID is 1, the character's inputs switch to being controlled by the player 1 control scheme, and same for the player 2 control scheme. So if I added in a player 3 or a player 4, I would just have to write if input ID for input ID 3, and then I would have to write the control list functions for remapping what these are to this one, because these right here, these aliases, are written in the code. So like, let's see if I can get to physics process. So if you pressed let's see, where's the good button? Okay, yeah, so here it says right button right here. Okay, now if I did I could have written UI right, but I wrote right button, and then it says right button equals UI right. So that's how you do it, and the more you can keep that stuff as alias, the more you can change it later at ease. And you like changing things around in video games. I'd argue 90% of what makes a good game is if it basically tweaked the final bits after it gets the functionality in enough. So that's what we have. 2 characters that can interact through attacking and no other means. And tomorrow I am going to work on a so the first immediate things that I need to do are this. So while the enemy character, because this right here, it was functional for the purposes of seeing if my player character in the previous game was fun enough to play as, but as an actual like thing that would be put into a final thingamajig, it spawns like I'm getting error messages here that are printing out on a list. It acts funky a lot of times. I don't like it. we're changing it, we're redoing it. But for the time being, I just I had it in the previous project because I needed to work with it, and I'm going to redo that for this game too. But this gets redone later. What we're going to do is that there's going to be a checkpoint that the players can get into, and then there's also going to be a thing wiping on the screen, like just like a flat line. Uh, oh, that's guider scrolling this way from right to left, left to right, up to down, or down to up. Just wiping across the screen, and if you touch it, you die. And if you get to the checkpoint and you're the first person to the checkpoint, you get immunity and you're safe from getting hit from the white thingamajig. So then the core simplest version this point of the game is that you are racing to be the first person to get to this checkpoint. And then if you're the first person to get to that checkpoint, then you went around. Or if you're the person who didn't, die before reaching the checkpoint, then you went around too. So that's how it's happening. And I'm going to try to work on that main obstacle and that main finishing line. And then after that, when that gets put together, then the other functions start getting put into the game where uh, obstacles like those, like say standard Goomba type enemies, we work on those. If it's an enemy that maybe throws something at you, work on that too. If I want to have it so that you have to uh, you can run across a bridge, and then when you're at the other side of the bridge, you can cut the drawbridge and make it harder for the other person to catch up. That comes after I do day two, which is going to be the checkpoint and the killing wipe. And the way that I think I'm planning on doing that is this. So uh, when the wipe gets spawned on screen, I'm going to have it be a object that's going to be moving at a consistent direction. I'll probably do an export variable on it to basically determine its direction, probably 1 through 4. Maybe I can actually get an actual proper directional name for it, but for now it's easier just to work with numbers because computers like numbers. It's kind of the computer's whole thing, and just trying to get like English names and all that for everything is gonna be a bit funky. But what I'll do is that I'll have it be um, number through 1 through 4, depending on the number, depends on the direction that it's going to be moving towards. I'll probably also have a thing that I can control the speed too of the object. Checkpoint. It will probably just clear your character. It might trigger an animation to kind of like look like a teleporting thing, but the character will just clear out of existence. If the character clears out of existence, there's no way that that character would get hurt by the yeah, I mean there's no way that yeah, and then I said that right the first time. There's no way that character would get hurt by the wipe that's going to kill them on the screen. Well, let's just call it the kill zone from now on, just because it sounds stupid just calling it the wipe. So the kill zone is going to be moving across the screen, and if the character though gets to the checkpoint and then their object is cleared, then there's no way that they can get hurt by the kill zone. And if they get hit by the kill zone, they will have a point that gets rewarded to the opposite player, which then I'll just handle the point stuff as also like for that too will trigger the loading of the next sequence, the next level, the next challenge that the characters will go through, and then we'll just see is have the characters go through multiple challenges, and whoever don't win / doesn't fail the most of them, then they become the winner. So for the but yeah, so like the scoreboard stuff, that I can trigger that through global variables, which yeah, whatever. I'm already talking about this stuff, so I can show it. So auto loads. Okay, so here you have this thing where it's a singular script, and I put this call my script to auto loads, and I was going to probably clean it up later, but Here, it allows for certain things. So the best way to describe this in the simplest terms, at least the way I'm using it in my very hacky scrub, baby's first game method, is that an auto load, uh, when it loads in the script, there's certain values that can change over from different screens. So if I'm go from this level here, right here, there's this entire level. So if I had the bull values of that determine how many hit points that this character has, and I moved from one level to another, that character is going to be cleared from the game, and everything in this level would be cleared from the game. But then it would load the next level, and I would control that next level's player character. So it's just it's clearing everything and bringing everything up. That's how it's happening when you're transitioning between main scenes in the game. However, if I wanted elements to carry over, like say my points, my lives, my my health, all of that stuff, I would need to load it in. There's a lot of names for these types of things, and I sometimes get them confused and I forget it, what differentiates what. But point being though is that there's but this thing though loads at the start of your game, and it stays loaded throughout your entire game experience. So if say like I had these things and then my points become, like say I got 1,000 points in one level, and then I get to the next level, I'm going to still have 1,000 points. But if points were tied to the player, I get 1,000 points at one level, no more points at the next level. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make the scoreboard for your players for the players be um determined completely by this thing right here. So then it carries over, and then I can just make levels as individual scenes right here. And I think that's really it for now. Obviously, there's more. I could get into more nitty gritties, but I think that's just I don't know. That's too much for right now, which is of this just documentation thing. Heck, I probably said too much. I think I said more than I wanted to. Oh well, getting it out there. Hopefully, if you're somebody who cares about all this stuff or watching it or using this documentation for later, you get something out of this.